You know that one secret your family has? The one nobody ever talks about, but it shapes everything? The one you carry for everyone else? My family's secret was a lie that protected my father's reputation. Yesterday, I told the truth. And now, I'm watching their perfectly constructed world burn to the ground. My name is Maya, I'm 29 years old, and my world was supposed to be built on binary code, not betrayal. But here I am, in this sterile, glass-walled boardroom in Austin, Texas, facing the investors of the company I built from nothing. My own brother, Ethan, our charismatic CEO, just finished a polished presentation on why I, the chief architect of our technology, needed to be immediately removed for gross incompetence and instability following my recent accident. He smiles, confident the vote is a mere formality. I push myself up from the chair, my legs still aching. Before you vote, I say. My voice quiet but carrying across the polished mahogany table, there's a feature in the platform's core architecture that Ethan forgot to mention in his slideshow. I call it Arthur's Key, a little tribute to our grandfather. It's an unbreakable encryption kill switch. If I am forcibly removed from my administrative role, the entire platform, every line of code, every byte of user data, will permanently self-corrupt in exactly 60 seconds. The blood drains from Ethan's face. The investors stare, their expensive pens frozen above their notepads. Now, I continue, leaning forward slightly. Shall we discuss the real reason we're all here? This isn't just a corporate takeover. It's one of those deeply personal family revenge stories that starts in a garage and ends in a war. To understand the cold fury in my voice, you have to understand the partnership that brought us to this room. If you've ever been the silent engine in someone else's victory lap, the one doing the real work behind the scenes, just type the name of the city you're watching from. I want to know where my fellow architects of the unseen are tonight. Our company, InnovateNext, was born in my tiny apartment off South Congress Avenue in Austin, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a singular belief that I could change the way people connect online. For 2 years straight, I was the architect. I wrote the initial 100,000 lines of code, designed the intuitive user interface, and debugged the system through sleepless nights fueled by tacos from a 24-hour food truck. I poured my soul, my intellect, and every waking hour into creating something elegant, powerful, and seamless. It was my masterpiece. Ethan, my older brother, came in when I had a working prototype and needed funding to scale. He wasn't a coder, he was a storyteller. He could walk into a room of stone-faced venture capitalists and sell them a dream, a vision. He was handsome, confident, and articulate. He became the face of InnovateNext, while I remained the brains. On the surface, it was a partnership that worked perfectly. He brought in the millions in funding. I built the product that was worth billions. He graced the covers of Austin tech magazines. I pushed out the critical updates that kept our users loyal. Our parents, David and Susan, adored this arrangement. They would share his magazine features on their Facebook pages with gushing captions like, "So proud of our brilliant son, the next big thing in tech." My name was rarely mentioned. When I tried to talk to them about a complex new feature I'd launched, my father would nod politely before asking, "That's nice, honey. So, when is Ethan's next big press conference?" I wasn't the celebrated visionary. I was the quiet, reliable infrastructure, assumed to be working perfectly in the background, just like the servers I maintained. Every founding story seems to have this dynamic, doesn't it? The one who builds it and the one who presents it. Type brains if you were the one creating it from nothing, or type face if you were the one bringing it to the world. I need to know who else is out there. For 3 years, our system worked. The company grew, our user base exploded, and we became one of Austin's most celebrated startups. I was content to remain in the background, finding deep satisfaction in the silent hum of a perfectly functioning platform. I trusted my brother to handle the spotlight. I trusted my parents to value my contribution, even if they didn't understand it. That trust, I would soon learn, was my biggest design flaw. Everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon in May. I was heading home from the office, my mind preoccupied with a new algorithm, when a distracted driver in a massive pickup truck ran a red light on I-35. The impact was violent and immediate. I woke up in Del Seaton Medical Center to the sterile smell of antiseptic and the grim face of a doctor explaining the damage. A shattered femur that required surgery and 2 titanium rods, 3 broken ribs, and a severe concussion that left me with dizzying spells and frustrating memory gaps. My world, once defined by precise logic, was now a confusing, painful blur. My family visited, bringing flowers and empty words of comfort. My mother patted my hand and told me to just focus on getting better. My father assured me that Ethan had everything at the office under control. It was during my second week in the physical rehab facility, as I was struggling to take my first agonizing steps with a walker, that the courier arrived. He handed me a thick legal envelope. Inside, on expensive law firm letterhead, was a formal notice from the InnovateNext board, a board chaired by my own father. It cited my erratic behavior and unpredictable mental state post-accident as a critical liability. It was a termination letter and a buyout offer for my shares, a pittance that amounted to less than 1% of the company's valuation. They were using my moment of greatest physical weakness as the legal grounds to erase me from my own life's work. The betrayal was so profound, it hurt more than the shattered bone in my leg. Lying in that sterile rehab bed, surrounded by legal documents designed to methodically destroy me, I felt a despair so complete it was almost peaceful. They had timed their attack with surgical precision. I was physically broken, mentally foggy from the concussion, and utterly isolated. My own family, the people who were supposed to protect me, had cast the deciding vote to throw me away. For a few days, I did nothing. I let the pain medication numb the physical and emotional agony. I stared at the ceiling, and I seriously considered signing their papers, just to make it all stop. The fight seemed impossible when I could barely walk to the bathroom on my own. But on the 5th day, a friend brought me my work laptop, thinking it might make me feel more like myself. That night, unable to sleep, I opened it. Not to work, but to remember. I navigated to the oldest archived version of our platform's source code, the very first build I had ever compiled in my tiny Austin apartment. It felt like opening a diary. As I scrolled through the thousands of lines of code, a piece of my own history, my eyes fell on a commented-out section I hadn't looked at in years. It was a note from my grandfather, Arthur, a brilliant old-school engineer who had looked over my initial designs before he passed away. He had insisted I keep this one seemingly redundant section of code. His comment read, "Maya, good architecture always has a hidden failsafe. When they inevitably try to take credit for the building, remind them who holds the original blueprint. Your key is in the cornerstone. I'll always believe in you." The cornerstone. It was his codename for the initial user authentication module, the very first thing I ever built. It wasn't just a message of love. It was a clue. A breadcrumb left for me years ago by the one man in my family who truly saw me. A flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks ignited in my chest. Hope. It's amazing how a voice from the past can give you the strength you need for the future. If a memory of a loved one has ever given you the courage to keep going, just hit that like button. It tells the algorithm that these stories of quiet strength deserve to be heard. That single line of code from my grandfather became my new mission. From my rehab bed, with my leg elevated and an ice pack on my head, I transformed my hospital room into a command center. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was an analyst with a problem to solve. The first thing I did was investigate the high-priced law firm Ethan had hired to draft my termination papers. They were a notoriously aggressive firm in downtown Austin, known for corporate raiding, not simple employment disputes. It was like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It didn't make sense, unless the goal wasn't just to remove me, but to obliterate me. I spent hours diving into public records, news articles, and legal databases, my fingers flying across my laptop keyboard. I cross-referenced the firm's lead partners with recent tech acquisitions. And then, I found it. The lead attorney on my case, a man named Marcus Thorne, had recently represented a major competitor, a West Coast tech giant called Omnicorp, in 3 separate hostile takeovers. In every single case, the pattern was identical. A key founder was ousted under controversial circumstances, creating internal chaos. Then, Omnicorp would swoop in to acquire the destabilized company at a fraction of its market value. The pieces started to slam into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't just Ethan trying to get a bigger piece of the pie. This was a coordinated corporate attack, and my brother was their inside man. He wasn't just trying to push me out. He was planning to sell our entire company, our shared dream, to our biggest rival for parts. The betrayal was deeper and more sinister than I could have possibly imagined. My family wasn't just being greedy, they were colluding with the enemy to dismantle everything I had ever built. The scope of their treachery was breathtaking, and I knew my investigation had only just begun. I had to find the irrefutable proof. Knowing what they were planning wasn't enough. In a legal battle against a corporate giant and my own family, suspicion is worthless. I needed proof, the kind of digital smoking gun that couldn't be explained away. And I knew exactly where they would have planned their digital coup. On the company's own communication servers. Ethan was clever, but he wasn't a systems architect. He didn't know about the diagnostic backdoor I had built into the server's root directory during our initial launch, a fail-safe designed for emergency data recovery. This wasn't just an emergency, it was war. Late one night, when the rehab facility was quiet and the only sound was the hum of medical equipment, I initiated the protocol. My fingers, still clumsy from the lingering effects of the concussion, felt slow on the keyboard, but my mind was sharp. I bypassed the standard security layers and accessed the server's raw data logs, a place no one but me knew how to navigate. I targeted the email archives for Ethan, my father, and the lawyer, Marcus Thorne. As I suspected, their sent folders were pristine, too clean, but they had only performed a surface-level delete. They hadn't wiped the shadow copies from the server's deep backup partitions. It took 3 hours of painstaking work, but then I found it. The entire, undeleted email chain, a complete blueprint of their conspiracy. It started 6 weeks before my accident. Thorne had outlined the strategy. We need a justifiable cause for removal. Any perceived instability or personal crisis will be our leverage. My father, our own father, had replied, Maya has been under a lot of stress lately. It wouldn't be difficult to frame a narrative. But the final email, from Ethan to Thorne the day after my accident, sent a shard of ice through my heart. It read, "The car wreck is the perfect opportunity. It's the crisis we needed. Draft the papers. We move now." They hadn't just capitalized on my tragedy, they had been waiting for it. The proof of their conspiracy was sickening, but as I scrolled deeper into the recovered data on my laptop screen, it still didn't answer the most fundamental question. Why? Why would Ethan, the celebrated CEO of a company valued at over $200 million, agree to sell it out for what the emails revealed to be a mere $20 million deal with Omnicorp? It was a fire sale, a complete betrayal of our shareholders and employees. Why burn down the entire kingdom for a handful of gold? The answer was in a separate, encrypted folder on Ethan's personal server partition, a folder I broke into using a password I knew he'd used since high school, the name of his first dog. Inside were not company documents, but his personal financial statements. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just in debt, he was facing catastrophic, life-altering ruin. He had taken out a massive, high-leverage personal loan to invest in a volatile cryptocurrency that had since crashed to nearly zero. He owed over $15 million to private lenders who were not the forgiving type, with payment due in less than a month. The Omnicorp deal wasn't a strategic move. It was a desperate, panicked escape. The $20 million payout wasn't a profit. It was just enough to cover his personal debts and leave him with a few million to disappear and start over, leaving our employees and early investors with pennies on the dollar. And my parents. Their own emails revealed they knew everything. They weren't just favoring their son, they were trying to save him from public humiliation and financial collapse, and they had collectively decided that my future was an acceptable price to pay. Their golden boy was a fraud, and they chose to sacrifice their daughter to protect his tarnished image. There's a moment when you realize the fight isn't just about what they did, but about who you are. If you've ever had to become your own champion because no one else would, this community is for you. Subscribe and stand with those of us who refuse to be sacrificed. Armed with a flash drive containing their entire conspiracy and finally discharged from rehab with a new steely resolve, I walked straight into the lion's den. The quarterly board meeting. I arrived just as Ethan was finishing his eloquent, heartfelt speech about the unfortunate but necessary decision to remove his own sister for the good of the company. He spoke of my instability post-accident and the unacceptable risks I now pose to our investors. My father, the chairman, looked on with a pained, somber expression, playing his part in this corporate theater to perfection. When he finished, all eyes turned to me. They were expecting tears, a weak defense, perhaps a plea for mercy. Instead, I walked calmly to the head of the table and plugged my flash drive into the presentation laptop. "Thank you, Ethan, for that moving performance," I began, my voice even and clear. "Now, for a slightly different presentation, which I've titled The Real InnovateNext Story." With a single click, the first recovered email appeared on the 80-inch screen behind me. The one from the lawyer, outlining the plan to use any personal crisis as leverage. I clicked again, the email from my father, agreeing to frame the narrative. Click. Ethan's email, celebrating my car accident as their perfect opportunity. I methodically displayed the evidence for the next 10 minutes. The secret negotiations with Omnicorp, the insulting $20 million fire sale price, and finally, a screenshot of Ethan's personal financial statements showing his massive crypto-related debt. The air in the room grew thick and cold. The investors stared, their faces a mixture of shock and fury. My father looked like he was going to be physically sick. Ethan was speechless, his confident facade completely shattered. "So, you see," I said, turning to face the room, "this was never about my stability. It was about his desperation." And then I delivered the final blow. "And before you vote, you should know about Arthur's key. Because if I am removed, InnovateNext ceases to exist in 60 seconds. The company your friends at Omnicorp thought they were buying will acquire nothing but a digital ghost." The silence that followed my ultimatum was more explosive than any shouting match could have been. The investors weren't just angry at the blatant deception, they were terrified. Their entire multi-million-dollar investment was suddenly tethered to a digital kill switch held by the very person my brother had just publicly declared unstable. The power in the room had shifted so completely it was almost a physical force. The meeting was adjourned in absolute chaos. That evening, I got a call from the lead investor, a pragmatic Silicon Valley veteran named Chen. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Maya," he said, his voice strained with the stress of the day, "you've made your point. Ethan and your father are out of the company, effective immediately. But we have a problem. The Omnicorp deal is dead, and our company is now radioactive on the market. I have a new offer for you, from the board. $25 million, cash, for your shares and full intellectual property rights. You disable Arthur's key, you sign an NDA, and you can walk away from this whole mess, free and clear. Start a new life, on a beach somewhere." It was a tempting offer. A golden parachute. More money than I could spend in a lifetime. A clean break from the family that had torn me apart. I could disappear, travel the world, and never think about InnovateNext or my family's betrayal again. But as I considered it, I looked at the lines of code still open on my laptop, at my grandfather's words. This company wasn't just an asset to be sold. It was my life's work, my passion, my soul encoded into a platform meant to connect people, not to be a bargaining chip. Handing it over now would feel like the final betrayal, a betrayal of myself. "No," I told Chen, my voice clear and firm. "The company is not for sale. My family tried to write me out of my own story, and then the investors tried to buy me out of it. They still didn't get it. The world may not always understand why you fight, but we do. Subscribe if these stories speak your truth and you believe that some things, like your integrity, are not for sale." My refusal to sell sent a clear message to the board. I wasn't a disgruntled founder looking for a payout. I was the leader who had just saved the company from a catastrophic betrayal from within. Backed into a corner, and with the implicit threat of Arthur's key still hanging over their heads, they had no choice but to place their bets on me. The following Monday, an emergency all-hands meeting was called at our sprawling Austin headquarters. The official company-wide email simply stated there had been a leadership transition. As I walked onto the stage in the main atrium, the room was buzzing with nervous energy and wild speculation. Chen, the lead investor, made the announcement. He briefly and professionally stated that Ethan and my father had resigned from their positions for personal reasons, effective immediately. Then, he turned the microphone over to me, introducing me not as the former chief architect, but as the new interim chief executive officer of InnovateNext. For a moment, there was a beat of stunned silence. Then, a slow clap started from the back of the room, from my senior engineering team, the ones who had been in the trenches with me for years, who knew exactly who wrote the code and fixed the bugs at 3 a.m. The applause grew, spreading through the entire company, becoming a thunderous roar of support. It wasn't just applause for a new CEO, it was a collective sigh of relief. It was validation from the people who truly mattered, the ones who built, maintained, and believed in the product alongside me. As I looked out at their faces, I realized this victory wasn't just mine. I had not only reclaimed my own life's work, but I had also saved theirs from being dismantled and sold for scrap. The company was finally in the hands of someone who understood its heart because she had been the one to create it. The restoration had begun. My first weeks as CEO were a whirlwind of damage control, reassuring investors, and stabilizing the team. But amidst the chaos of restructuring the company my family had nearly destroyed, my grandfather's words echoed in my mind. "Your key is in the cornerstone." I knew Arthur's key, the kill switch, was a powerful deterrent, but his message felt deeper, more fundamental, like there was something more I was missing. He had called the user authentication module the cornerstone. Digging through the company's original incorporation documents from years ago, I found a reference to a safe deposit box at a small, independent bank in downtown Austin, registered to the company at its inception. My grandfather had insisted on it for storing foundational documents. My father and Ethan, in their rush to build their public image, had likely forgotten it even existed. The next day, with the required legal paperwork as the new CEO, I went to the bank. The bank manager led me to a small, dusty box that hadn't been opened in years. Inside, beneath old incorporation papers and the first draft of our business plan, was a thick, sealed envelope made of heavy cardstock. My hands trembled as I opened it. It wasn't a letter. It was an official document from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. It was the original, granted patent for the core matching algorithm that powered all of InnovateNext. It had been filed 5 years ago, a full year before the company was even officially incorporated. And the sole inventor and owner listed on the patent was not InnovateNext Inc. It was me, Maya Reyes. My grandfather hadn't just left me a clue in the code. He had quietly, brilliantly, and legally secured the ownership of my creation in my name from the very beginning. He had built me a fortress of legal protection around my intellectual property. Even if the board had succeeded in firing me, I would have always owned the very heart of the company. It was his final gift, a testament to his unwavering belief in me, an act of love so prescient and powerful it took my breath away. Holding that patent in my hands, I finally understood my grandfather's true legacy. It wasn't just about engineering or code, it was about foresight, integrity, and protecting the creator. The patent gave me absolute legal power, but his memory gave me my moral purpose. This company would no longer be a monument to my family's greed and betrayal. It would become a testament to his values. This journey became the most important family revenge story I could imagine, not one of destruction, but of complete and total transformation. At the next board meeting, I didn't just present a new business plan, I presented a new philosophy. We launched the Innovate for Good Incubator, a multi-million-dollar fund dedicated to supporting ethical tech startups, especially those founded by women and minorities who are so often pushed out of their own success stories. We committed a percentage of our profits to STEM education programs right here in Austin. My story taught me that a bug in a line of code is fixable, but a bug in your moral compass is a fatal system error. True success isn't measured by a company's valuation, but by its impact. It's not just about what you build, but how you build it and who you lift up along the way. My family tried to take everything from me, but in doing so, they forced me to find a strength I never knew I possessed, and a purpose far greater than a successful IPO. I learned that the best revenge is not simply to survive, but to build something better from the wreckage, something that no betrayal can ever touch. If you believe in the power to rewrite your own story, to turn your deepest wounds into your greatest strengths, then this channel is your home. Hit that subscribe button and join us as we continue to champion these journeys of courage. Because you deserve a life and a legacy built entirely on your own terms.